Welcome to Corwin's Teacher to Teacher podcast with host Carol Pelletier Radford. Carol is an experienced classroom teacher, university educator, founder of mentoringinaction.com, and author of 4 best-selling professional books for teachers. She believes the best form of professional learning happens when teachers engage in authentic conversations and share their wisdom. In every episode, Carol and her guests share stories about pivotal moments in their careers, successful classroom strategies, and personal actions they take to minimize stress and stay healthy. The Teacher to Teacher podcast is a place to engage in authentic conversation and reflection with experienced educators. We hope these conversations will energize you, keep you inspired, and remind you why you chose to become a teacher.
Hello, and welcome to the Teacher to Teacher podcast. I'm Sonja Hollins Alexander, Associate Vice President, Content Advisor, and Scholar here at Corwin. This season of the podcast focuses on mentoring in action. We have such a rich episode for you today, centered around the topic of student voices. Our guests are Amanda Brueggeman and Marcel Monnar. Amanda Brueggeman has dedicated over 20 years to education, beginning her career as an elementary classroom teacher and later serving as a literacy coach. Currently, she trains instructional coaches in student-centered coaching and provides professional learning for new teacher mentors. Drawing from her book, Student-Centered Mentoring, Keeping Students at the Heart of Teachers' Learning. As the founder and president of One on One Learning, Marcel Monnar has built a nationally recognized organization committed to helping students succeed through personalized education. Inspired by his own challenges as a student, he built an organization that has helped hundreds of thousands of learners thrive by focusing on individualized instruction, family engagement, and educator empowerment. And I just want to say what I know about Amanda Brueggeman. She is always thinking about the students. As you heard from her book title, students are at the heart of new teachers learning. Her enthusiasm and her passion for supporting teachers in this area is infectious. So I'm so excited that she will be able to then have a conversation with Marcel, who is really making a difference in schools and in the community. Wow. How amazing that Marcel is utilizing his own learned experiences to think through how to create an organization that will extend its territory and be able to help even more students in more communities. And so, as educators, it is important to continuously reflect on our practices and make adjustments that prioritize the success and growth of our students. This episode's discussion highlights the significance of asking questions and fostering a classroom community that encourages open communication and feedback from students. Overall, the conversation emphasizes the need for educators to be mindful of student voices and to focus on student learning in both mentoring and teaching. Let's listen in to this enlightening conversation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Pelletier Radford, and this is the Teacher to Teacher podcast. And we are on episode 9. Can you believe it? And the topic for today is student voices. And we all know the purpose of mentoring. The theme for this whole podcast season has been mentoring in action and mentoring. But I would be totally remiss if we didn't talk about students because that's the purpose of mentoring. Ultimately, my work with mentoring novice teachers and their mentors is to help students be more successful in their classrooms. So, this is a topic that's pretty close to my heart, and I'll share a story about how student voices got integrated into mentoring conversations a little bit later. I have two fabulous guests today who are very well versed in students and student voices and helping to have students just be a more visible part of all the work that we do in schools, and not having it be done to them all the time, but having them be part of the conversation and the ways in which they can groom themselves to be leaders and assist their teachers in being better teachers, which I'll share a little bit about that. So I'm going to have each of my guests, Marcel and Amanda. Thank you for being here. Marcel, would you introduce yourself and tell me just your background as a former teacher and who you are, and then we'll have Amanda. Welcome.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Pleasure to be here. Um, I am a former special education teacher. I taught kindergarten through fifth grade ESC for a couple of years before continuing on my path and as founder and president of One-on-One Learning, in which we currently provide, well, we design and implement small group, highly individualized intervention programs for students in need. And we do this partnering with school districts, states, and other agencies throughout the United States. And really, our focus is to truly support students incorporating mentoring through their academic journey between the grades of kindergarten and 12th grade.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And when I met Marcel in person at a conference earlier the end of last year, earlier this year, and I wanted your voice to be heard on the podcast. So I'm glad you were able to bring what you're going to be sharing with us to
Thank
light.
you.
Amanda,
Yeah.
Dr. Amanda. I love to highlight my colleagues who have achieved their earned their doctorates. Please introduce yourself and share your background as an educator.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'm really glad to get to join you all today too. So, um, I have about 20 years or more in education. I started off as an elementary teacher. I got to teach both fourth and fifth grade for about 10 years. I even looped with my students one year, which was a great experience. And then I was a literacy instructional coach in my local district for 10 years before I started doing full-time consulting as a student-centered coaching practitioner consultant. And then also I support new teachers and mentors in trainings and that. And my big focus with that support in both avenues of the mentoring and the coaching has been to how we can have a perspective on students with the support that we give each other as well as new teachers. So it's really important for me to really ground our lens in students and to, I think, be true to the topic at hand is hearing their student voices in the conversations and in our work. So I'm really excited that, yes, I got my doctorate in teacher leadership. I decided not to go to
Love
admin.
that. Love that. Love teacher leadership. That's my area of expertise as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's a big decision because many of us only see the pathway into educational administration, which is leadership. But I felt the same way when I earned my doctorate that I wanted to focus on mentoring and teacher leadership. So here we are having a conversation about teacher leadership, student leadership, how this all weaves together, and it's under that big umbrella that I want to introduce in this season of mentoring, like how this mentoring fits. So thank you both. So what I love about the podcast is the two guests know each other, and we're going to have this conversation. Uh, to react to our points of view and hear some ideas, and it's like going to a conference listening to someone that we sat next to at an event. So before we get there, I love mentoring, and I want to delve into each of you have a story, we all do, of how mentors have helped us or how we have mentored someone. So let's get personal here before we get into the topic of student voices, which we know we're going to get to. Marcel, why is mentoring important to you? Like, how did it show up in your life? How do you feel when I say share a story about being mentored?
My initial reaction is so many to choose from, but in narrowing it down really to if you can say some type of ground zero when it comes to mentoring, um, I go back to an experience I had while I was completing my degree at Florida International University. My degree is in specific learning disabilities, and my professor, Dr. Judith Cohen, was teaching a class on instructional strategies for early literacy. And I myself struggled in school when I was a child. I mean, I was not a great learner, specifically when it came to reading. It was a challenge for me. Never really recognized that until I got older. And through this class, and in speaking with her, she really opened my eyes to how teaching in different ways really can connect with different students. And I realized that that was what was missing when I was in school. I came from a schooling generation where everyone sat in the classroom and everyone opened to the same page, and there were no centers, there was no rotations, and it was really tough to engage, right? Myself and other students or children, friends of mine. But in seeing things through her eyes and listening to the way that she explained just ways of connecting with students, right? And it really opened up my eyes, and it gave me motivation to want to be able to provide this real time to other students. And the trajectory of that, what's that done for me personally, but also my life and my career has just changed massively. And I have helped hundreds and thousands of students, um, and it's something that I do to this day. Is I try to incorporate mentoring and bringing a perspective. To me, mentoring is bringing perspective, making things relatable, from different perspectives. That helps me grow and helps others identify what obstacles might be in their way that are blocking their growth so that they can
Right,
overcome these
right,
obstacles and
right.
continue to grow.
Well, I'm so grateful that you could honor her and say her name, and
Yeah.
um, that all of us who are listening, all the listeners, it's so important for us every once in a while to just dive in and say the name out loud of these people that so generously and effortlessly coach us and guide us through questions or whatever that aha moment. It's buried in there, and sometimes we don't take the time to reveal it. So I really want to honor you, Marcel, for being honest about who actually helped you and put you on the trajectory that is helping others. So,
Yeah.
Amanda, what's your reaction to that story? What what do you want to say to Marcel?
Well, I started making some notes actually, because
Ah,
I was thinking about like when you were talking about yourself as a learner and how you had difficulties as a learner, and then like having someone be able to guide you to be able to then help students in that, and just with those learning disabilities, that struck me and really made me think about how we can help other teachers and help, because I'm also get to work with as an adjunct professor, and getting to help some of those new teachers like think about what is it that they can contribute to their students. And that's something that stood out to your story, is that you have something to pass along, that contribution.
right. And there's so much in that story that you can even mull over later. But as I was listening to it, it just reminded me of how many teachers go into teaching because of that, because
Mhm.
they struggled as learners. Like you took your journey, not you were a classroom teacher in special ed, but then you took it even further. Like and that whole little seed of what your professor did as you were investigating your life's path um, was very powerful. That little seed has grown into this massive, tree. So thank you again. So
Yes.
Amanda, what's your story then? Where did mentoring show up that touched your heart in a different way?
Well, I, like Marcel, kind of thought about like there's so many different moments and experiences that I could talk about today. But I think I'm going to go with one that was during my first year as an instructional coach, whenever I was actually working with the person that mentored me when I first come to the district that I worked for so long. Um, when we were working with our new teacher that was her mentee, Tori, and I just remember Tori having that passion for teaching like I had, and so I really connected with her, that desire just to want to help students and want to just be a great teacher, right? And I remember many conversations with Diane, her mentor, how we could support and keep that passion alive for Tori. And just remembering the belief conversations that we wanted to have with Tori too, because I feel like us talking about our beliefs and how we can impact students is so important. And continuing to revisit that both for Diane and myself was also really important, I think, to like remind ourselves of why do we do what we do? It's not just to take a textbook and put it in hand of students and teach from, the teacher manual. There's so much more to the work that we do, and helping Tori to find that passion too, I think is so important of what can we teach students? It's not just about the content and the academic side of it. It's also how do we help students believe in themselves? How do we, really help students have that ownership of their learning and the work that they do? And helping Tori learn how to plan around her student needs, around her student, even what they like and dislike so that it can help her be a better teacher. Those are probably the pieces that I remember so much about many planning conversations that Diane and Tori and I would all three have together. And that collective, I think, is so important that we formed like that net of support for Diane, but really it also helped us too. So
Right. That what I'm hearing in your story that I think is really important to unpack a little is that intentionalness, intentional mentoring from the mentors in knowing what you were doing, as opposed to what mentoring used to be like before I studied it and before the paradigm shifted to collaborative mentoring from directed mentoring. It was just like a buddy system, and mentors were trying to help, but we really didn't know how to do that. And what I love about what you just shared that our listeners can underline is that there's more to it than just memorizing and learning the content. It's that who are you going to be? Like, who are you going to be as a student? But it's as the mentor too. So it's happening all on multiple layers with the teacher, the classroom teacher, the mentor, the students, the novice teacher. Thank you for that depth of story. Marcel, what's your reaction to Amanda's insight?
Uh, I mean, in listening to it, it really, I connected with it so much in terms of, especially when you're talking about purpose, why are we teaching and why are we helping students? And I think that that is such a key piece that someone can forget along the way, because you can get bogged down with outside factors and, compliance requirements or whatever school needs your administration is asking of you, but really going back to the purpose of why you're teaching, and specifically why you're teaching a particular student, because every student might need a different or have a different need. So really walking through that and learning strategies to identify that and plan around it, I think is a key skill that educators and even students can learn and are needed to
Yes.
learn.
Yes, and students can learn how they learn best if we let them tell us. And I love Howard Gardner's work on multiple intelligences. And I just feel when I was doing my doctoral work there, and I actually met him a couple of times, he'd pass in the hallway, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, that's Howard Gardner. And he was just such a presence for me because it was this huge insight that we all learn differently. And yet schools, like Marcel was saying, when we were all in school, well, when I was in school, it was all the same. And that's just how teacher preparation was. So Amanda's working in teacher prep. I'm working with teacher schools. Marcel's working in the schools with students. We're all coming at it. We have a different entry point, but the big ideas that I think we all need to keep saying out loud is multiple intelligence. Like there's so many different ways to share our purposes in life and what we need to learn. It's complicated. It's a complicated discussion. Um, we would read his articles and just go, wow, this is clear, but big ideas, like it's because it's his ideas really influence everything, teacher
Mhm.
education, purpose, everything. And I'm sure you integrate them into both of your work. So that's a plug for Howard Gardner. Hope you're listening out there. All right. Here's a story that I'm going to share of how student voices and student perspectives got integrated into my mentoring work intentionally. So I'd been doing mentor training, got the doctorate, did the whole thing. And mentoring can be very directive as teaching can be, training the mentor how to mentor, you know. And then the paradigm starts to shift to more of a collaborative approach. And I get more involved with the school district. So I was working in a large urban school district, preparing and supporting their mentors. And the complaints that kept showing up related to the novice teachers being overwhelmed and not knowing what to do and not their students not being successful. And the mentors would bring it to class. I would try to unpack it and we would try to figure out how can you be more intentional in your mentoring while this is going on. And someone must have mentioned something about off the cuff, like, oh, let's ask the students. Let's just ask the students how the teacher can be a better teacher. And we all laughed. And then I said, well, let's pilot something. All right, I've got this class of college people in mentoring training. We're going to assign that you're going to do a project on with your novice teacher together collaboratively in asking the students how they think the teacher could be a better teacher. So we designed a anonymous student survey. The mentors, I developed it with the mentors around the 5 teaching standards because we wanted to know that the teacher was hitting the standards. And then the teacher, mentor, and the novice got to add some questions because of things that they wanted to know if the students were responding. And we set about having the mentor give the survey to the students. Now, here was the whole goal was to have a mentoring conversation to look at the data together. So this is where it was a little different. Everybody's done surveys. We asked the students, but in real time, in a mentor-mentee, do we look at the data, not wait till April when we find out that the teacher didn't do well and the students didn't like her and blah, 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 but in real time, So the teacher could actually change her practice, kind of like Tori, what you were doing with Tori. But it was from the students. I have videos of these that I hope our listeners, we're going to put one of the videos, we'll post it in the notes so you can see it. So we did this as a research project to see, like, would this work? We actually videotaped the students and recorded. I interviewed them and say, hey, how do you feel about taking a survey about telling your teacher? And that survey is so awesome. Everybody should watch it because these students are like, oh, you're going to ask me? I think that's a really good idea because I'm actually the one the teacher's teaching. And it's hilarious. It's like 3 minutes long, but it's a teaser because a lot of my critics were saying, you can't do that. Like, what, you're just going to ask students and then the teacher's going to, I got a lot of critique not to do it. And I was like, I'm doing it and I'm going to get evidence from the students that they want to do it. Because the big thing was they're all going to say the teacher's bad because that's what students will do. Middle school students. So that's what I was getting from. So I did elementary, middle, and high. And then we recorded the conversation between the mentor and the mentee looking at the students. So this is what we learned. This is what I discovered about student voices. They don't all say the teacher's bad. They actually tell the truth. There might be one or two, and the teacher knows who they are without the names, even though it's anonymous. And we discovered there were themes that the teacher could grab onto without the mentor even telling the novice what to do. So the key point of the survey was the mentor and the novice read the data and they only said, the question was, what 3 things stand out to you in the data? So it was just like a Google aggregation. It wasn't anything sophisticated. If there were open-ended questions, we just listed them. Very simple. And what the mentor had to do is not tell anything. And the whole inquiry approach was the goal was to have the novice teacher see what the students were saying. And it was so, I think it's probably my best work. If I look back at all the projects that I've done, this anonymous student survey, everything's on my website if you want to see the whole thing, showed me the power of the aggregate voice so that the novice could pick a theme and actually feel like they were doing something to change their practice in real time. So I'm going to just leave it there. It goes on. And let me just tell you one thing. So every novice that we did the pilot on, the one question that they all looked at and wanted and said without fail in the interview was, all the students like me. They all asked, do you like your teacher or something phrased that way? And that was so important. It almost didn't matter whatever the student said about changing the practice. It was like, at least, at least they like me. I can fix this. I can fix that. So, okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Amanda, reaction, response. What do you think about that idea of how I integrate it into mentoring?
Well, I love the uniqueness of having the mentor and the new teacher talk about the data together because I encourage new teachers to gather feedback from students in various ways, and surveys being one of those options too, because that can help you with those adjustments. And I think something though that stood out the most to me is the feeling that they needed to have that connection with their students. So they need to know that they're building those relationships with their students to know, kind of going back to what I was talking about with Tori earlier, can I believe that I have an impact on my students? Well, if I know that I have a rapport with them, then that can happen. So there's so
Yes,
many.
yes. I love the way you tease that out. Marcel, what do you
Yeah.
hear from that story? And let me just say, yes, I think the uniqueness is them doing it together. But it just happened that I created that because I was in this class and the mentors needed something to do. And then what changed it was that they couldn't talk. I had to literally create a whole protocol where the mentor couldn't point anything out. I'm like, no, you can't point anything out. And then that was the magic that we caught on the video, was the awareness from the novice to see it, that they could see it, but the guidance from the questions. Well, do you see this, or do you whatever? Marcel, what do you think? I'm getting all excited because I want to do this
No,
again.
it's such a passionate topic, and
I
I agree with
know.
you. I'm sure we can just sit here for another hour just talking about this alone, which, by the way, I give you kudos. It's a great practice to be brave enough to go try to get feedback from students. And what I see is that beneficially, teachers are hearing what I think is practical and functional feedback, right? You're making it where it's very relatable for a teacher to help them adjust a teaching approach or teaching strategy, change their mindset a little bit so that it connects more with their audience. And I think that that's very important in teaching, that we to be, without compromising the standards, as you mentioned, you wanted to make sure that everything stuck to standards. I just feel that as a teacher or even as a mentor, we need to be able to shift and move with our audience to make it so that they can connect and really get out of it what we're trying to deliver, and
Yes,
the
yes.
objectives we're trying to get across.
And you could, both of you could do this simple technique
Yeah.
in your own work, which I do
Yeah.
want to hear more about. But it just honors the student voice in a
Right.
way, but it's not personal, identifying anybody in particular. But the one thing that I did notice in the research when we did it is that there were the outliers, and at first I was, let's just look at the themes. I was preparing the mentors for these conversations and coaching them. And in my first round, I was like, well, let's not look at the outlier who says I hate the teacher and so forth. And then I said, no, yes, let's look at the outlier, because the outlier, you may or may not recognize who that person is, but it will draw your attention as a teacher to the issue. So for example, maybe there was I think there was one that the teacher doesn't know how to say my name, because we asked those kinds of questions. And as Amanda, you're saying, you can't build a relationship if you're saying the person's name wrong and correctly all the time, or you're not asking. I might say it incorrectly, but like I'm saying, gee, I'm sorry, I can't say your name right. Like there's some relational conversation around that. So when I saw that one, I said, no, now the teacher didn't know who it was. She totally changed her practice to go through the whole class the next day and ask and do the names. And it shifted the whole way her students responded to her. She didn't have to know who the person was. It shifted. So response to that, Amanda, reaction to outliers, or like a student who does say something negative, like what do we do with that? We don't ignore it. What do you think?
You make me think about how a classroom community is so important for that vulnerability for students to be able to share those things. And whether it's in the anonymous survey or whether it's as time goes on, how those surveys can lead to building that strong classroom community, that culture that you want to invite students to be open to sharing, whether it's anonymous or whether it's not. And I feel like that's for us to be able to hear students into that mix. That's so important to be able to create that culture of openness.
Right. That they're part of that community.
Yes. Yes.
We're not doing it to them. Marcel, reaction, comments about this before we dive into each of your work?
Yeah, I mean, just when it comes to outliers, I personally believe, and even within our organization, I emphasize never ignore the outliers, because that's how things, and students, not things, but students
Right,
really fall through the cracks. And sometimes those quiet ones, sometimes those small comments and that small little
right,
feedback that you might disregard kind of goes unnoticed, and it can have the biggest impact. As you mentioned, if anything, it just brings to light something that you might have overlooked. So
right. I love
e-
that. Yeah.
every
So
feedback
I
is not the
learned.
norm. It's those outliers.
Right,
Those are the
right.
cracks.
So it isn't just all the research themes and the big ideas.
Right.
Yes, I
The
agree.
average. Right.
Yeah, right. The average
Not the
where it
average.
doesn't go
Right.
anywhere. Right.
Right.
And you were one of those outliers, and look at where you
Yeah.
are now,
Right.
Marcel.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I want to have each of you share the work that you're doing now that relates to student voice and just how you're doing it. Amanda, you have books. Tell us your book titles. Tell us why you wrote these books. Let's hear it.
The current book that's out is Student-Centered Mentoring. It's all about the mentoring relationship and partnership between new teachers and mentors through a student-centered lens. So just like you mentioned earlier, it very much capitalizes on that collaborative approach to taking that lens of students into the mix, very different than that traditional from before. And it's just a book that's strategy based. So very simplistic in that you can go to any part of it that would fit your mentoring partnership needs to be able to help have some tips and ideas around certain things. Like, for example, I think this connects really well to the student voice piece is there's a part where I have around directional supports for new teachers and like thinking of the different categories of support types that they might need. And I've actually had a new teacher that's taken that concept and done that with their students too. So like North is the emotional support category. And they've talked with their students about what are some different things that would fall under this emotional support category. But I feel like it starts with we have to have those conversations between mentor and new teacher and what could that look like and sound like with our students to be able to create that culture, that community that we want, build those relationships so that we all feel emotionally able to learn and be in this place.
So is the book for mentors and new teachers or all teachers or
So it's written to the audience of mentors for them.
okay.
But I've had several new teachers that have taken it on as well. And I've done some work with some schools and districts where they've gotten the text for both and they're able to connect with it in many ways also. So,
So Marcel's tutors might benefit from
yeah.
this as it
That's.
fills
I'd like
in.
to see
Yeah,
more.
we'll talk more about that. Marcel, dive in with your thing and let's go back and forth a little bit. So
Sure.
tell us all what you're the president of the world, the
They're right.
president of the world.
Well, one-on-one learning, yes, right. One-on-one learning is, um, we provide, we design and implement small group intervention programs for schools, school districts, and other agencies throughout the United States. Um, we have been very lucky to be able to do this for the past 25 years. And we partner, as I mentioned, with various school districts throughout the country. Our focus is working with students kindergarten through 12th grade in designing these individualized programs and implementing them. Uh, in addition to just really focusing on, teaching and tutoring literacy and mathematics, what I think, which ties right into what we're talking about today, what I think really helps us continue to grow and help students is the fact that we incorporate a lot of mentoring strategies into our tutoring sessions. So we're really not just focusing on those high quality research based teaching strategies for literacy, implementing curriculum, but our tutors and our training and preparation protocol really incorporates various strategies on mentoring students, right? It's how to ask questions, what kinds of questions to ask, how to build rapport, and really going back to some of the things we spoke about earlier, is how students can recognize themselves and what some of their roadblocks are that can open up those doors to help that allows them to learn. And we found that all students can learn. We just got to get through that roadblock or through that obstacle, which is usually themselves or a misperception of sorts that allows them to do that. And thankfully, we've been able to help thousands upon thousands. We help somewhere between 15 to 16,000 students a year learn how to read and do math better.
Oh, and
Yeah.
that brings you right back to the beginning story of you as a student,
Yes.
where you are helping yourself, really, your
Yeah.
inner child self to be successful in school. Amanda, reaction to the work Marcel has created for himself.
Oh, so I got really excited and I had to hold myself back because there's certain connections. I think it actually works to that connection of the example that I was giving around support types, because I focus so much on a mentoring strategy of asking questions. Like one sole strategy is just about asking questions, but then like I layer in different questions throughout the text too, because it is so important on the questions that we ask. But then you said something that it makes me excited for my next book that I'm currently working on. It's about building habits for resilient learners. And we are layering so many questions in there already as we're starting to draft this work, because you name probably the best tool that we can put into our toolbox as educators is asking questions. And
Yes, and
yeah.
that was what I was doing with the mentors. Having the mentor ask the novice
Yep.
teacher a question, like, what do you see here? Instead of me telling them what I
Yes.
see. It so so we have some interesting themes that have emerged from this conversation. I can't believe the time is up. With this, we could go on
Right.
forever. And I hope the two of you will connect with each other, because it seems like you have a lot to share and the resources. So as we wind down, before I share my affirmations for the listeners, what what is your takeaway from this conversation? Any insight from talking to each other, or to me, or to hearing the story, or just focusing on student voices? What do you want our listeners to take away or to emphasize? Amanda, what's showing up for you?
Oh, I think about several different things with our conversation today, but I guess just, and it probably goes back to a tip that I think about: take the time to talk about students, ask questions of each other, just take that time, because it is valuable time well spent. And from what I've seen in a lot of my research and work in many schools is that we can easily let that time go by. And I even had a new teacher and mentor that I've worked with that she's mentioned that a lot. Natalie says, you don't let the time go by, take the time to have conversations with each other, with colleagues, with your new teachers, whoever it is, and ask each other questions, because it takes a collective to do the job that we have at hand.
Right. We're all mentors. So if you're
Yeah.
a listener and you're saying, "Oh, I'm not a mentor, I'm not a new teacher." Yeah, you are. We're all mentors. Students are always looking to us. Novice teachers are always looking to everyone, and it is the collective. It does take a village. It's everyone is mentoring and teaching all the time. Marcel, what do you want to emphasize, take away?
I'm gonna narrow it down because there are many, but I did want to say that it's inspiring and reassuring just to be a part of this and hear the different perspectives when it comes to mentoring and the importance of it. Um, I think that overall, asking those questions and being vulnerable to listen. And I will add a piece, you know, being a good listener is just as important than just being a good question giver, right?
Yeah,
So
thank you.
being able to actively listen and take in is just as important. Um, but I just
You will like one of my strategies. It talks about giving and receiving feedback.
right. I
I
mean,
love that.
communication is both ways, right? Not just one way.
Yes, yes.
And I think that being able to do this more often and others just realizing the benefit of it is equally as important as to all the other research that's out there when it comes to helping students and helping them achieve and succeed in the classroom. So thank you so much for this.
Oh, and I think as teachers, we model everything. Our students are watching us. So when we're good listeners and good question askers and all of that, they take that in. And then when we honor their opinion and perspectives, um, they take that in too. So
Yeah.
I want to close this fabulous episode. I don't want to say it's my favorite. Okay, but it might be. I like to leave the episode with an affirmation for mentors and one for novice teachers. So the affirmation for mentors today is, I am a mindful mentor who focuses my mentoring conversations on student learning. And for novice teachers, your average affirmation, and for all teachers, I am a mindful teacher who focuses my mentoring and teaching on student learning. So I want to thank all of the listeners. Episode 9 is closed, and I hope you will join us for episode 10, the final episode in season 4, which is going to be called Designing a Transformative Mentoring Program.
Thanks, everyone, for joining today's Teacher to Teacher conversation. We hope this time together energized you, inspired you, and reminded you why you chose to become a teacher. You can purchase any of Carol's books and any books mentioned in the podcast online at www.corwin.com. Please leave a review and share this podcast with your colleagues. Thank you for listening to the Corwin Teacher to Teacher podcast, a place to share teacher wisdom and engage in authentic conversations with experienced educators.
Come explore Corwin's free New Teacher Toolkit and resources. We've curated these resources based on extensive research from teachers, coaches, and principals alike. Whether you are brand new or a veteran teacher, find ready-to-go teaching tools at corwin.com today.